Okay. We are ready. Face speakers on. Okay. If you sell a ship or a boat, whatever it was in those days, what accessories are included in the boat? Macher is a Torah. It includes the mast. So that's a big piece of wood that goes up very high, upon which you hang the sail. Vesanes, that's the sail. Vesa ugin. Ugin is the anchor. Veskol hamanhigin oisa, and any other tools that you need to operate the boat, like the outboard motor and the throttle. In our language. Thank you very much. If there's deck hands, they're not included. And not big leather pouches that were used to hold the cargo. And surely not the cargo itself. But if you specified everything in the boat, everything is included. The Rishbam points out something very important, and that is by selling land, we pointed out that there's a difference if you're being makdish it, there's a difference if you're giving it the matana. That's not how it works over here. The high pirka, metaltlin, the metaltlin, loishna mecher, veloishna matana, vehektish kulon shovin, vehanu deloy mecher. Whatever is not included in a mecher is also not included. So there's no distinction by these metaltlin between mechira and asim. Turan, what is that? Iskaria. It is the mast. Chenu omer erez milavanain lachu lasais tayrin alecha. Now these psukim are discussing. It's in the Novi V'Cheskel discussing the destruction of one of the Goyish nations. So it starts off by saying how they built themselves up. So they built themselves up with getting an erez from Levanon, a big cedar tree, to make their tyrant, to make their mast. It was figuratively referring to them building up their city. Nes adjers, the sail, the Chenu as well, in reference to this nation that was being destroyed. Sheish berikma mimetrayim. It was like linen that was woven from Mitzrayim. Hayim efrasheich. That's what you spread out. To be your sail. Ugin, Tani Rabchia, Elu Ugin in Shalah, that is the anchor. V'cheinu omer, halahen tishabarna ad asher yigdalu, halahen teagena. So Naomi told Rus, are you going to wait so long till I have another child that you can marry? So teagena means you're a naguna. A naguna means you're anchored to your husband. So that's where the word igun, it refers to being anchored to something. Okay, manhigin. What are these manhigin? Amar of Abba elu hamashut shala. Not like what I said. The outboard motor and the throttle means the oars, but you got to think big. V'cheinu omer alunim doesn't talk about the water skis or anything. I'm not sure how that works. And the life jackets. V'cheinu omer alunim miboshon asu mishutayich. Mishutayich, your oars are made out of aluminum miboshon, also high end. Viboy sema mahacha, or v'yardu me'ani yisayim kol tayv semishay. They all left their boats. All the people who were holding the oars. Tanu Rabban, hamoicher es asvina. If someone sells a ship, machar es iskala. It also includes the iskala, ves bar hamayim shabesoicha, and if there's a fresh water hole in it, it includes it. Iskala is the ramp to enter the boat. Bar hamayim shabesoicha is naturally, if you're on the ocean, can't drink from the ocean water, so they used to carry a reservoir of water. Which refers to, you might call it a dinghy, or you might call it a tender, but it's a small boat. If the boat couldn't pull up to the shore, and there was no harbor there that can pull up to shore, there would be a small tender, a small boat with which they would go to shore up. Sumcha Summer, Hamoichas Svina, Mochas Adugas. Adugas is also the same thing. It's a dinghy or a tender. Amar of a bitas on Adugas, Abnosan Bavla have a karila boots. He would call it a boots. Because Amar Inchi, boots asa the Miyashan, the little boats of the city Miyashan. Sumchas, the Bar Israel, karila Dugas. Pedixiv, Acharischem, Pesiros, Duga. And after you, they'll be going in a Duga. Amarava. Now we're getting to a very, very fascinating set of memories from Rabbah. And we're going to see these stories are so wild and off the chart, it's almost like a joke. It's almost like a joke. So the Vilna Gaon writes that, of course, we cannot take these stories at face value. They're merely remozim to some very deep soidas hatoyah. And then he proceeds to explain them. So there's a yid by the name of Moshe Shapiro. I don't know who he is, but I know that on Aldaf, there's a fellow by the name of Yecheskel. I'm not sure what I forgot his last name, and I was going to remember it, but I fell asleep on him last night. And he was a Talmud of Moshe Shapiro. And his Rebbe, Moshe Shapiro, gave over 150 shiurim on these agadatos to explain the words of the Vilna Gaon. And he wrote those shiurim and he made them into a sefer. And his Rebbe approved of it. And I guess read them over to confirm that that's what he said. So he presents a series of shiurim on every little story we have here. I don't remember all of it, but whatever little I do remember, I'll share. So Omar Rabba Ishtoi Li Yama. Who shared this with me? People who travels on the ocean. So of course the Vilna Gaon says that this is referring to the Talmid Chachamim and the Tzaddikim of the Frierdiker Doros who are Osek and Torah, who delve into the Yama Torah. Hi Gala, the mitzvah l'svina, and there's a lot of different opinions and perushim on these members. There's the Mashal, there's the Gra, there's the Maral, there's the Ben Yoda. So I'm going to throw whatever flew into my head. I'm not going to know who said what, but I'm going to try to remember. So Hagal the mitzvah l'svina, tidal waves. We call them white caps because when you have high waves, the top of them appear to be white. They look like they have a sparks of white fire at the tip. Like I said, white caps. Large waves usually have like a white foaming at the top of it. So, and those are the types of waves that are going to knock you over. How do you beat them? The way you beat them is the alvasa with clubs. The chokik Allah, that's a lay that says that's scratched out on them. Eke asher eke, which is a shmosh of Hashem. Ka ka, tzavakos, amen amen, sela. And if you hit the waves with such a club that has all these things on it, v'nayach, that'll calm the waves down. So one of the pshatim that I heard, I remember who said it. I heard it from Rabbi Rosner. Is that this is referring to the Yetzer Hara. The wave is the Yetzer Hara that wants to attack a Talmud Chacham that's cruising along in the water. And the reason why it's white is because white represents purity. We know that when the Yetzer Hara comes to get you, he always tries to not just get you to do an Avera, he tries to tell you to do just a mitzvah. It's a mitzvah to stay up late. Are you going to miss Shachris the next morning? So he always tries to dress his Averis into mitzvahs. He's trying to make them right. It's brought down. That's one of the reasons why they shech the Satan is because it's bad enough that you wanted to convince people to do Averis, but to try to dress it up as a mitzvah, that's the worst. And the only way to save yourself from the wave of a it also shows how taivas come in waves. If you could just ignore them, it will pass. But I'll call upon them. How do you deal with it head on? By strengthening in your emunah and knowing that your Rebbe runs the world, and what's best for us is to stick to the Torah. So the Gra said that these are major soidos. This, okay, it's a nice, even if the Gra said, I don't know who I'm saying this over from, but even if the Gra, so what type of big soid is this, right? It's a nice little emotional. So the Gra goes weiter, and the Gra says, even if the intention in the Gemara is to share the soidus of Torah, and it's brought down, I think, from the Ramchal that there was a lot of soidus that had to be given over, but could only be given over to those who are the right madrega, who are amol in the right way, and therefore they can't screen everybody individually. The best way to do it is to cloak it in these interesting stories, and through that, only the people who should be getting this information should get it, unless you have our scroll and then it unlocks it to everybody, and it ruins the whole purpose. But about it, there's even bigger sidus in here that we don't even begin to grasp. But the Gra says something fascinating. He said, why did it, even if you're going to cloak it in symbolism, why come up with the most outrageous stories? We haven't even seen the tip of what the outrageous stories are. White waves. We're going to see some outrageous stories. Why outrageous? It should almost sound like Dr. Seuss. It should almost sound like fantasy. Why would they do that? So he said something, and again, I was half asleep when I was listening to it, but he quoted from the Gra that it's actually to punish Moshe Rabbeinu. And he brings down, I guess, through Midrashim, that Moshe Rabbeinu, he was supposed to talk to the rock and not hit the rock, because the water that they were getting out of the rock was really a reference to Torah Shabbat Peh and the Sodas HaTorah. And he hit it, and he didn't speak to Penichusa. Moshe Rabbeinu made it that La'olam Voed, it's going to be very, very hard to extract Torah. And therefore, they went to the greatest lengths to make it so difficult to uncover and reveal the deep secrets of Torah that's why it's cloaked in these weird mashalim. Again, I was half asleep when I heard it, so maybe there's more to it than what I heard. But I'm not sure how to draw from there that you use these crazy stories, but there's reasons for it that are well beyond our scope. Hamarava, Ishtol in Chuziyama. Again, in Chuziyama, oh, by the way, the name of the Sefer of Shapiro that explains all these is Nechuziyama, just by coincidence. It's called Nechuziyama. So, Ishtoil Nechuziyama, Ben Gala Lagala, between each wave is Tlas Mea Parsi, is 300 Parsi. Veroima the Gala, and the height of each wave is Tlas Mea Parsi, is 300 Parsi. Zim Nachada Havo Azlinan V'or. I was once traveling in a ship. I think the Aleph changes it to Besvina. The Dalinon Gala, and the wave lift us up so high. Ad Chazinin Bay Marbate de Kuch Vazuta. We saw the resting place, the harness, the stand, whatever it is, of a small star. And this small star was so big that its base that held it up was so big. The Havali Kimivzar Arborin Guryuye Vizur de Chaydla. It would be the amount of space that it would take to spread 40 Guryuye of mustard seed, which was a very vast area. And the Idalin Tvei, if we would have been lifted even higher by this wave, have a Makalinon Mehevle, we would have been burnt up by the heat of the star. Okay, so that's one also crazy type of thing. So one of the pshatim I heard, and what this is saying is, and we're going to have another reference to this later, is sometimes someone is being Oisik and Torah, he's a beginner, and he gets convinced that he's too much too fast, and they can get burnt. Anyway, Varami Legala Kala Lechaverta, and each wave speaks to his friend. They're 300 parts apart, yet they're having conversations with one another. And one wave tells the other wave, Chaverti, you who got to shore before I did, Shafkis Midi Ba'alma, the Loishet Fasei, did you maybe leave some part of the world over that you didn't flood in the tsunami? Because you see this big wave going, he assumed that his friend's flooding the whole world. So I can go now and flood. Did you leave anything over for me? Omer Lei. So the first wave tells the second wave, no, not a chance. Chazi Gevortech, the Morech, Maloi Chuta, Chala. HaKadosh Baruch Hu set up sand on the beach. So if you see that, V'loy Avri, we can't go past the sand of the beach. That is a border that we're not going to cross. So as the response says, Kloimer ainli rishus lotzes. I don't have rishus to even go one sand grain further than I'm supposed to. Mali roichav chut any yochal lotzes minachol. I can't leave the sand. So I'm not sure what this one was referring to. I don't remember the pshatim that I heard on this one. Shenemar ha'oisi lo'isiro, you're not going to be afraid of me. No umashem. Imi panel l'shechilu, you're not going to fear me. Asher samti choyel gevul liyam chok olam v'le'avrenu. So basically, the first wave told the second wave, I'd love to go further, but the sand of the beach doesn't want to let me go any further. It's basically what they told him. Amar Rabba, l'didi chazali hormin or hormiz. We're not sure if this is a demon, if this is a malach, if it's a human, if it's half malach, half human, but it was some demonish type of character. Bar Lilis, the son of Lilis, Kikaroit akufyo deshura de Mechuza, he would run along the ramparts of Mechuza. So the top of these walls, if I envision like the wall of the old city, so it goes up and down, up and down. There's like a whole bunch of mini towers, I guess. So he would be running along there. The Roid Parsha, and on the ground, there would be a rider with a chariot riding along the wall. And he would be riding along the wall. And this Hormuz running on the top of the wall was not able to keep pace with the rider of the chariot. He wasn't able to keep up with it. What does that mean? That means the demon can't keep up with the tzaddik. As the Shpam says, the shade was running and trying to catch up, but he couldn't get there. He wasn't trying specifically to outrun the demon, but he was, and that shows that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is merachim al b'yosav, because the demon is not able to catch up to the rider. I'm sorry? Right, King and the Juggler discusses many of these stories. He's going through, I think, a Gemara in Bechayris that has exactly many of the exact same stories, but I think it's called The Juggler and the King. And it was written by the Rosh Yeshiva of Baltimore, of Feldman, based on the Pshatim of the Gra. He writes a lot about these meanings. They're very fascinating. I read the book, but he doesn't include all of them. That's correct. Zim Nechada, one day, Havamesargin lay Tarti Kudnaisi. What he was doing is there were two donkeys, and this Herman fellow was jumping from donkey to donkey, back and forth. So Havamesargin la Tarti Kudnaisi v'kaimon Atre Gucci the Rungag. Where the Rugnug, where were these two donkeys standing? They were on two different bridges, like one's on the Brooklyn Bridge and one's on the Manhattan Bridge. But Brooklyn Bridge and Manhattan Bridge are very close to each other. Vishavar Mahai Lahai Umahai Lahai. Rashbam says these bridges were very, very far apart. So maybe he was jumping like from the Manhattan Bridge to the Williamsburg Bridge, or maybe to the Queensboro Bridge. But literally he was jumping from bridge to bridge, landing on top of a donkey that was on each bridge. And while he was doing that, he had two cases of wine in each hand, and he was juggling not the cases, but the wine in the cases. So he would throw up the wine from this case and from this case, and then he would catch the wine with the other case. So and he would be having these two goblets of wine, and he was actually throwing the wine back and forth, and not one drop reached the ground. And that day, because of this, there was a major earthquake. The world was shaking because of what he was doing. Was until either the Rishbam says it means the Malchus of the Shadim said, "Hey, you're not supposed to reveal yourself into this world," so they killed him because of it. Or it means the Malchus, the actual government, got a hold of him and killed him because he was wreaking havoc. So this, they say, is a moshel to This Herman was a marshal to somebody who's running after his passions, his desires, his gashmis. He's jumping and running, and he's totally focused only on achieving his worldly desires, and he doesn't even miss a drop of them. As he's jerking from taiva to taiva, he's so focused he doesn't give up one little drop until it's time to do a reckoning. Omer Rabba, Zok Rabba, Ludidi Chazali, I myself saw. So now it's no more Nechusa Yama. I saw this myself. Or Zima Bar Yoime, a Ra'im, some type of mountain goat that was only 1 day old. You know how big it was? It was the Havak Hartovar. It was like Hartovar. If you remember, Hartovar is one of the two mountains that was saying that the Torah should be giving on me because I'm big. And then at the end, it was given on Har Sinai. So the Havak Hartovar, the Hartovar Kamahav, Arba Parsi, 4 Parsi. That's how huge this baby mountain goat was. Umishaka de Savari, merely the length of its neck, plus a Parsi was 3 Parsois. And Ubeimar Bata de Reshe, if the animal would lie down, the amount of land it would take to hold his head would be Parsu Palga, a Parsa and a half. Talking about a huge beast. And what happened was, Rama Kufta, it let out an excretion. It had to take a dump. And it plugged up the yarden because it's whatever it's called, its extract was so big that it plugged up the yarden until, of course, the water washed it away. It wasn't a permanent blockage, but it blocked the whole yarden. That's how huge this is. What is this a remes to? Now, those who learn this is a remes also to Talmidim who are learning Torah, and they start learning Torah, and before they're at the point where they're ready to do pilpul, they're already hacking with lomdus, but they didn't even learn Shisha Shiddur Mishnah yet. Yet they're already hacking around thinking that they're big knockers. They're going to mess things up. I saw a frog, the Havaki Akra the Hagrunya. It was so big, it was as big as the whole city of Agrunya. And how big is the city of Agrunya? The Akra the Agrunya Kam Hava Shittenboti. It had 60 houses. This is referring to a Talmid Chacham who learned all 60 Mesechtas. There are 60 Mesechtas in Shas. And why is a Talmid Chacham compared to a frog? Because a frog doesn't stop croaking 24/7. So too a Talmid Chacham doesn't stop his quest for learning 24 hours. Also, Tanina, this big serpent from the water came out, Bala, and swallowed it, and Osha Pushkansa Ubala, and Ubala Tanina. And then a big female raven came and ate the serpent. So you have now a bird that's a lot bigger than Big Bird of Sesame Street. It's massive because it ate this Pushkansa, who ate this massive frog. And then you know what happened? The Salak Yosef Be'ilona. And then this bird went and sat on a tree, on a branch. You would expect the branch to come crashing down. Think of how strong the branch of this tree must have been. And if I wouldn't have witnessed this and seen this with my own eyes, I wouldn't believe it. So this, they say, is also reference to the frog, is a reference to the Talmid Chacham. And the Yetzer Hara comes after him. And when the Yetzer Hara comes after him, it's called a tanin. A tanin is because a tanin is a water creature. And the way it works is he's coming after the Amaratim. A tanin is also a snake that goes on the ground. A snake eats earth, it hangs out on the earth. So the tanin is referred to the Amaratim. The Amaratim try to distract the Talmid Chacham with Latzonis. And that takes away their focus. And that makes them dangerous. So that's the symbolism of the frog being eaten by the tanin. The pushkansa is the oyrev. An oyrev is an animal that has no mercy. The Talmid Chacham wants to be able to overcome the distractions and the taivus of the world, and to stay focused on his learning. He has to do it by Mesiras Nefesh. He has to do it by sacrificing himself so that he won't become victim to the tanin. And once a Talmid Chacham is successful because he's totally focused on learning and he's totally marshal lefish for the Torah, then he will be zoicha that his parnasa will be taken care of. He'll be able to sit on the tree of an eitz chayim and he'll be able to sit on the tree and he'll find the wonderful donors, the wonderful zavulans who support that Torah. But what type of Talmidei Chachamim are zoicha to have the wonderful zavulans? Those that are truly Moshe Nefesh, which probably flips it around. I'm thinking, if someone is going to be a Zavulan, you should know Hashem is going to get you somebody. Hashem is going to get you somebody who is Moshe Nefesh for learning and is the real deal. So the focus of this Gemara is on the Zavulans because there's so much money. Oh, he brings it down. There's so much money that's required by the Zvulans in order to support the Yisachars. Hashem is going to give that money to the Zvulans. So he says, if I wouldn't have seen the strength of this tree, in other words, if I wouldn't see how much money and how much tzlacha the Rebbeinu Shalom gives the Zvulans, I would have never believed it. But it's only because they're doing it with Mesiras Nefesh, and that's why there's so much money there to be able to fully support these Talmidei Chachamim. And he speaks out as well. Is that the Gemara's focus is on the cheshivas of the Zvulun over here. So he speaks out as well is that in Eretz Yisrael is where the Yidden really saw the Rebbeinu Shalom and saw the Hashgacha. So it was only there where Zvulans would be able to have such Mesiras Nefesh to be able to give so much of themselves to be able to support Torah. In Bava, that never happened. And that's what Rav Papa Rav Shmuel meant. If I wasn't in Eretz Yisrael to see the Mesiras Nefesh that Yidden have for the learning, I would never believe such a thing, because in Bavel, such a thing would not exist. One day, I was moving around on my boat. I saw a big fish. The Yosvila Achla ate up some type of yeet or some insect went into its mouth, and it got killed. So let's see the exact wording. There's the dalet over here. No, is it dalet? No, it's before. It's Vav, I think. Is that Vav? Zayin? Tuna, this bug got into this animal, and then it says Vatchua. The Bach thinks it means that they killed it. The Bach Bay says it died. V'shadua, and what happened is that once it dies, a dead thing, the waves tend to force it up onto shore, right? You find beached whales because the whale dies and then it gets washed onto shore. But it pushed it to the edge of the water, and there was a city there, and it was such a big fish it crushed the whole city. The 60 cities got crushed. That's how big this fish was. Now there's a big fish, so there's a lot of food. 60 cities that were close by right away ate meat from this fish, so they had food. But another 60 cities that were much further away, who had to transport the fish in order to serve it to their families, they had to preserve the fish. So and they even salted, 60 cities came to take the meat and salted it so that they could bring it, to preserve it and bring it home. One eyeball netted 300 barrels of oil. That's how big it was. When I came back to see what was going on with this fish, I saw the Komanasri Megarme Mitalasa, the Yosy Levinu Hanach Mechuze. They took the bones, the rib cage of this fish was uncovered because they ate all the meat up, and each of those ribs were huge, like huge beams, and they were cutting those beams up and using those beams to rebuild the city that the fish crushed. I was in my boat. I saw what I thought was a fish, but I didn't know that it was a fish. I saw an island. I actually saw an island. The Yotzvila Chalsa was an island out of the earth. The Kadach Agmiluy, and there's even stuff growing out of the earth. If you go onto old roofs that haven't been maintained, you'll sometimes find literally trees growing on rooftops because moss and earth build up and they don't clean it. And there's literally plants and trees growing on the roofs. Then there's those people who have a green roof on purpose, but there's green roofs that are not on purpose. So he literally saw a tree growing on an island. Savrina Yabeshti, we thought this was a little island. Visalkina, we say, no, let's stop for a barbecue. Vafino, Vashlino, we made a barbecue agabay on top of it. Now the fish got hot because there's a fire on him. There's a campfire on his belly. The katcham gabay isabach, he flipped over. He loved to have a mekraver svinta. If we didn't have a rescue boat nearby, have a tavinon, we would have drowned. This is one of the most famous of these Gemaras of the juggler and the king. And of course, it refers to Klal Yisrael and Golis. We find islands, we find places where we're being accommodated. And we think, we finally have a permanent place. We're in Canada, developing. And suddenly the scum of Hamas make their way to our country and they shake it all up and we find that we have to leave. So that's what this is a symbol for. One day, Havaslina Besvinta, the Sagoi Svinta, Ben Shitza Lashitza the Kavara. There was a fish that had two dorsal fins. So you see them above the water. And we were traveling in the opposite direction of this fish, and it no longer took us to get from its front dorsal fin to its back dorsal fin while we were traveling in opposite directions, which would actually shorten the time. Took us 3 days and 3 nights. That's how big this fish was to travel from its front dorsal fin to its rear dorsal fin. It was going upstream, we were going downstream. So we should have been able to, we're upwind and downwind. Should have happened faster. And if you can tell me you didn't travel fast, like the famous story where someone said, when I lived in Europe, I had a property that was so big it took a day to drive my car across the property. So his friend tells him back, yeah, I also had such a car once. Right? So if you're going to think we didn't have a good boat, in the amount of time that you would cook up some water, a couple of minutes, our boat would be able to travel 60 parsi. It was like a 4,000 horsepower out, and it still took 3 days and 3 nights to get from the first dorsal fin to the second dorsal fin. The Sha'adi Parsha Gira, if you would shoot an arrow and we would race the arrow, the Kadmale, our boat went faster than the arrow. That's how fast we were going. The name of this fish was Gildana the Yama, because that's the only fish that is the Trey Shaitzi, because it has 2 dorsal fins. Again, I didn't have a chance to see the symbolism of this Gemara. Is our supposed to say anything? No, doing tshuva? So 3 days of doing tshuva can get you from one fin to the next. So he quotes that from the Marshal. I believe that's the Marshal talks about that. Yeah, that's how the Marshal learns up the Gemara. He learns it about tshuva. The Chazina Hutzifra, I saw a bird. The Koimat Kartuli B'Mayit. Its ankles were in the water, so we assumed the water is pretty shallow. V'Reisha V'Rekia, but its head was up in Shemayim. V'Arminon, we said Lekamai. It's pretty shallow. Maybe here's a good place to go cool off for a swim. Ubeinin Luchus, we wanted to jump into the water. Lakurin option to cool off. V'Novak Baskal of Armala, and all of a sudden the Baskal came out and said, Lo I recommend you don't jump into the water here. You know why? The Novlas Lechatzitza of Nagra. 7 years ago, the iron of an axe, which is quite heavy, fell here into the water, and it still hasn't hit ground yet. And V'lavishim to the Fishimai, not only because the water is very deep, but also the water is rushing, so it doesn't let it land. So if you jump out into the water here, you'll get sucked in, and you'll never survive. Amar Vashi, you know what the name of this bird was? It was called Ziz Sodai. How do I know? The Ziz Sodai is with me. One day, have a Kozlin B'Midbar. I was going in the Midbar. The Chazinin Hanu Abzi. I saw these big fat geese. The Shamti got 5 Mishmunayu. They were so fat that their feathers were falling off. I'm not sure why. If you're very fat, your feathers fall off. But that's what was going on. Well, I don't have any feathers, so it could be. The Kanadi, Nachli, the Mishchamitusayu, they were literally rivers, streams of oil oozing from them. Aminalahu, I said, Islam begavaychu chalkadama adasi. Where am I going to have the schus of having this geschmack of fat piece of meat in oilam haba? So what happened is Dali Gatva, one of these birds picked up its wing. The Dali Atma picked up its wing or its bone, and that means to tell me this was going to be my chelik. So I was going to be celebrating Olam Haba with wings. I guess spicy wings, oily wings. I'm not sure what type of wings. It's a very big tzar b'lachaim for these geese to be so fat. Really, if Mashiach would come already, then they would be relieved of their pain. But we haven't done the right mitzvahs and we haven't been misaking ourselves. Now they have to wait. So they're living in pain because of us. We're going to be punished for causing them this pain of having to wait so long to be eaten by us. That's why I understood it. Did I translate it properly? Is that what he says in the article? Okay. Zim Nachada, one day, we were walking in the Midbar, and who joined us, this Arab merchant. And what he would do is he had a special skill. He could smell earth and know where he is. If he would sniff the earth, he would be able to tell me, if you go in this direction, you're going to reach this city. And if you go in this direction, you'll be able to reach this city. So we asked him, how far are we away from the water? You're looking for water, you're in the desert. Well, he told us, give me earth, let me smell it, and I'll tell you. You're 8 parses away from water. Then we gave him, I guess later on, we gave him again earth to smell. We're 3 parses away. So he seems to know how close we're getting. We wanted to test him. We swapped out the earth. We gave him the earth, I guess, from 8 parses to check again. We couldn't fool him, meaning he was able to tell which earth was from where. Is that how we touched it? We weren't able to fool him. Amrli, he then told us, if you pay me an extra $50, I'll show you where the Meisei Midbar are. Ultimately, we went. Chazitinu, we saw them. The Damu command the Mifsami. They looked like they were like drunk. They had a smile on their face. They looked like they were happy. The Ganu aparked and they were lying on their backs, but their knees were bent. The knees were bent, which means there was a huge arch which was their knee. The knee was so big, was such a tall arch that for Ayol Tayasa Tuesday Barche, a guy riding a camel could have went in that arch. While he was riding a camel, so that would probably place him about 8 feet, 9 feet in the air. And then there was a kiva roimche, and he would reach out with a spear, so that would be, let's say, 15 feet totally, maybe 18 feet totally. And he wouldn't even be able to touch the top of the arch, which would be the underside of his knee. That's how big this knee was. Okay, we'll stop here, Bezim, and we'll be mamshech tomorrow with our fantasy game.